Nishijin textiles originally date back to 1,200 years ago. And since Kyoto was originally capital for 1,000 years, we have been weaving custom-made textiles for emperors, nobles, shoguns, and other people, whose money and time are of the essence. This is the background of Nishijin. Hosu was founded in 1688 as a weaver, and we continue to create custom-made pieces for those individuals. Nishijin is actually an area in Kyoto, about 5 kilometers west of the Gasho, the imperial palace, called Kamigyo-kuo. The textiles have been created there for 1,200 years and are characterized by the fact that there are about 20 processes in total, with one master craftsman in charge of each process, and the textiles are made through the hands of about 20 craftsmen. In the Nishijin area, there are craftsmen who have been dyeing for generations, craftsmen who prepare the warp threads, craftsmen who apply the gold and silver to the Japanese paper called aku, and craftsmen who cut the haku paper. In a sense, this was not a division of labor for the sake of efficiency, but a passing of the baton of a master class to embody the ultimate in beauty. We have been conducting research on natural dyeing at the Institute for Ancient Dyeing since 2020. But we decided to put it into practice. So we invited Akira Yamamoto, a leading expert on natural dyeing, to be our advisor. The natural dyeing of Japanese techniques from long time ago was basically taught by word of mouth, and not much has been documented in books. Mr. Akira Yamamoto was the only apprentice of such a legend, Mr. Udo Maeda, and we made him to an apprentice to our young craftsmen. The most important thing in natural dyeing is plants. And nowadays such plants have become endangered species. We are now building such a field in the Tamba area of Kyoto and raising the endangered species in it. Freshness is also important when trying to bring out the good colors of the plants. Water is also important. Good water is important. Fortunately, in Kyoto, if you dig a groundwater well, you can find some very soft and suitable for dyeing. In the old days, there was no chemical dyeing. For example, there was a dark purple color called Japanese purple that only the emperor was allowed to wear, or extract color from the roots of plant. For this mordanting process, branches and leaves of camellia are burned to produce ash, which is then powdered. By adding the ash to underground soft water, an alkaline solution is created. Using this mordant liquid brings out a clear and vibrant color. There is an ultimate recipe left behind by our predecessors more than 1,000 years ago in their pursuit of beauty. And if we reproduce such a recipe today, we can produce overwhelmingly beautiful colors. This is very interesting. However, natural dyeing is the same as plant dyeing, depending on the plant. The color varies depending on the individual plant and the part of the plant. It also depends on the vintage soil from which it was harvested. When we pursue this, we must also consider the Earth's environment, including what kind of soil and what kind of Earth's environment are necessary for the pursuit of beauty. This is a very complicated issue, but it is also an interesting one, and one that we are also involved in. Our textile is not only about new technology, but also about finding the future in the past, which is our approach. The Nishijin textiles are characterized by their 3D dimensionality. The weaving techniques that can weave thick threads, thin threads, and flat threads of various materials, and it can weave the most complex structures in the world. In this sense, Nishijin textiles are a kind of architecture. Textiles are a combination of vertical and horizontal intersections, and the layers are combined in such a way that the angle of the light the light source, and the color changes rapidly depending on the movement of the weaver. We are doing the same thing in textiles as jewelry designers do in how they cut diamonds and combine them with jewelry and metal. I think this is because of the fact that textiles played the same role as jewelry for the craftsmen in the past. Also, as for patterns, we want to create timeless textiles that change with the times. So we often take inspiration from natural textures or patterns from the skin of ceramics or from natural motifs. We tend to take inspirations from the naturals. And we try to create products that will last for 100 or 200 years. This year, we are collaborating with an Italian architect and designer, Michele De Lucchi, who is a world-renowned designer and architect. And he is also an architect who cares very much about the woods. Michele and I have been working on a textile project with the theme of wood. And this time, under the theme of mind landscape, we are focusing on micro and macro themes. We are utilizing wood grain patterns as the basis for each microscopic photograph, which is so-called functionality. The coloring, on the other hand, is done from a macro perspective, from a satellite photo of the Earth's forests and the Earth's land. We have created with these three perspectives into a single textile. We presented this new collection this year and had an extraordinary level of prosperity. There are many weavers in the Nishijin area, and there are also many craftsmen related to the weavers. In 1923, just at the time of my great-grandfather's generation, in addition to being a weaver, we also started wholesale business. We now distribute products made by various dyeing and weaving artists, including living national treasures, from Hokkaido to Okinawa, to kimono specialty stores and department stores nationwide. In a sense, we are now a kimono producer and distributor. Started as a weaver in 1688 and now a distributor. When we used to do textile business, we were still in the age of feudal society, such as the shoguns. This was a major turning point, not only for us, but also for the Nishijin region, 150 years ago. What this means is that, in a sense, the era of the samurai is over. The shoguns of the Tokugawa family had been one of our major clients in the latter part of the Edo period. But then they disappeared, and the national system changed drastically. Not a lot of customers could afford our pieces, and the emperor's family went to Tokyo. So, Nishijin sent 3 young craftsmen to Lyon, France, where the most advanced weaving technology was available at that time. In 1801, a man named Joseph Marie Jacquard invented Jacquard loom. The machine was controlled by a chain of cards, a number of punched cards laced together into a continuous sequence. Multiple rows of holes were punched on each card, with one complete card corresponding to one row of the design. So this movement was programmed. In a sense, Nishijin succeeded in bringing back this cutting-edge technology. So, the materials and technology that we had in our possession succeeded in bringing about innovation. And this is how the baton will be passed on to the next generation. The kimono market itself has been shrinking rapidly over the past 40 years. Other similar crafts markets as well. But the case of kimono market has shrunk to about 1/10. In such a situation, we obviously needed to take on new challenges in order to continue our business for the next 50 to 100 years. For over 1,200 years, we have focused on working domestically. But now we have decided to expand internationally. The problem we faced was the size. The width of Nishijinori loom is usually 32 centimeters, and kimono is 48 centimeters or 50 centimeters, which are basically hand-woven on a human scale. As a result, we couldn't achieve the correct sizes. In 2010, we developed the world's first loom with a width of 150 centimeters that can use our Nishijin textile technology and materials. And we are proud to announce that we are the first company in the world to develop a loom with a width of 150 centimeters that can be used by hand. In other words, what has been done by hand is now being done by a single craftsman operating a loom with a width of 150 centimeters. We succeeded in this development, and from this point on, we were able to expand our business. Our first client was an architect in New York named Peter Marino. Our first client was Christian Dior, and we began to work with them on the walls of their stores, chair upholstery, curtains, and so on. We started out by making our own tableware, and as we added tableware every year, we now have a total of 14 tableware units and 25 craftspeople working on them. We have been working with not only Dior, but also Chanel, Hermes, Cartier, Van Cleef, and Arpels, and other luxury brands that have adopted our fabrics. That's how it stands today. After all, textiles are really interesting, with a history of folds dating back an incredible 9,000 years. In a sense, textiles have been with people of all ages. What I find very interesting about textiles is that if it were just for keeping warm, tree bark or fur would be suffice. But why do people go to the trouble of breaking down tree fibers or other such materials, making them into yarn, preparing the looms, and weaving them? Why do people spend so much time and effort on decoration? Nishijin textiles are a prime example of this. What beauty means to human beings is a very important theme. What I can say is that the reason why Nishijin textiles have continued for 1,200 years is that we have been pursuing such ultimate beauty, and in a sense, economic rationality is secondary. I think this can be a hint for us to connect to the future. Philosophically, in pursuing such beauty, we would like to explore what beauty means to human beings and what happiness means to people through textiles. I was originally the eldest son, but I had no intention of taking over the family business, and I wanted to do something more creative. In fact, it seemed that preserving tradition is something that continues unchanged. I wasn't, and I wanted to do something more creative, so I started out and stayed in music. I originally heard the song Anarchy in the UK by the Sex Pistols when I was a teenager. I started out in an original punk band, and from there I started making electronica and electronic music tracks. And that's how I got my start. Back in 2005, when I was in Tokyo, I heard from my family a talk about taking Nishijin textiles overseas that no one had ever done before. And I thought, depending on how we do this, the traditional industry may become a creative industry. I thought that, and I wanted to do it, to be creative. And so I devoted myself to the family business. Now that I think about it,
今から本当思うとですね、
there is nothing more creative than the traditional craft of Nishijin
1200年のクリエイティブの
and the crystallization of 1200 years of creativity and innovation has been passed on as a baton. In this sense, I am having a very interesting time.
そういう意味では非常に今面白くやらせていただいてますね。島田大学だったり研究機関との R&D
We will continue to work with researchers and artists
そういう意味では
while creating textiles that have never existed
やり
before.
ながらやっぱり世の中になかった織物を作っていく。
Hoso's motto for manufacturing is more than textile, and we will always continue to exceed the common sense of textiles. Next year, the Osaka Expo will be held, and the exterior walls of the 65-meter long, a 13-meter high corporate pavilion will be covered entirely with our textiles. This is probably the largest scale in the history of Nishijin textiles, and it will last for 6 months. The textile will be used as a coating on the exterior wall. We are challenging such a project, and I think there are still many more barriers to be overcome in this area. The longer tradition endures, the stronger its gravitational pull becomes. If you jump from 20 floors with the bungee jumping, you will be pulled back down. And if you go down too close to the ground, you will be unable to move. The strength of tradition lies in the fact that it cannot be broken even if you want to break it. Because we believe in tradition, we are willing to try new things with the intention of breaking it down. But tradition swallows it and keeps changing. In that sense, because we believe in tradition, we continue to challenge with the intention of breaking it. That is our stance.